All right, it's Debbie, and I have Dr. William Davis back on the show to do a Q&A session. Our YouTube video had lots of questions for the Super Gut podcast out last year, and then recently we did a Gut to Glow interview, and I wanted to get him to answer the questions instead of doing them by email. He said, "Hey, let's just record a video." So he's so kind and on a mission to help you all, as well as myself, to get healthy from the inside out. I started the Gut to Glow protocol, making my yogurt with the Gut to Glow supplement, one capsule, fermenting it with half and half milk for 36 hours at 100 degrees, and on it this week. And I'm trying to stick with this protocol for, I think, 90 days. We'll ask him how long I should be on and off of it. So if you have questions after this video, let me know. I don't know if we'll do another Q&A, but I can at least ask him. So let's dive into how to improve our health, skin glowing, as well as gut health and everything related to it. All right. I have the expert on how to get our gut to be healthy from the inside out, so we're glowing as I'm on a mission, and be fit and healthy from the inside out. Dr. Davis, we're going to dive into some common questions we get on the YouTube videos, and you are the man to help us understand why we should make the Super Gut yogurt, your program Super Gut, Gut to Glow program, and give us a little rundown of the why.
Well, this got started with some very unique observations made in mice that amounted to essentially restoration of many youthful characteristics: thicker hair, smoother skin, increased dermal collagen, increase in mice mating behavior, which is social behavior for humans, dramatic increase in testosterone in male mice, increase in growth hormone, preventing them from getting fat, even on a bad diet. In other words, spectacular effects. So I started to play with this. The problem was the original probiotic, the commercial probiotic we made it from, was offered as tablets made for infants. So the dose was so teensy weensy that if you wanted to take that commercial product, you'd have to take about 30 tablets a day, which is ridiculous, of course, right?
Yes.
So I simply reasoned that, well, let's cultivate the microbe. How do you cultivate microbes? Well, you ferment them. And so the easiest to ferment food typically is dairy. So I made something that's like yogurt. It's not yogurt. It's nothing like the stuff in the store. I kind of regret calling it yogurt. Some of my followers call it Progurt or No-Gurt, but whatever we call it. It's not the stuff you get in the store. But it's this microbe that mimics so many of the effects that we initially saw in animals by this MIT group and other groups. And we've since seen it play out in humans, and we've seen a lot of it play out also in human clinical trials. And so all we're trying to do is taking this one microbe that nearly everybody has lost, Lactobacillus rhodori, because it's very susceptible to common antibiotics, and we're going to increase its counts about 1,000-fold. And you get bigger effects when you do that. So it's restoring a microbe we've all lost to regain all the huge effects. This microbe is carried by all hunter-gatherer humans unexposed to antibiotics and other things. It's carried by all wild mammals, suggesting it's essential for mammalian health. And we are witnessing some very dramatic effects, both in so there's two ways this works. One is it colonizes the small intestine and kills off fecal microbes that have invaded the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Extremely common, and thereby reduces endotoxemia. And that's how you get effects like reduction in blood pressure and blood sugar and release of fat weight. But the other aspect of this is it takes up residence in the GI tract, sends a signal to your brain to release the hormone oxytocin. People say the hormone of love and empathy. So there is that, yes, increased love, generosity, desire for human companionship. But there's also, I call oxytocin the hormone of shape and body composition, because it has magnificent effects on how much muscle you have, where fat is deposited, your appetite. So this combination, it's the first microbe I started playing with, Deb. We've since have been playing with lots of other microbes. But by sheer luck, we picked the one that's probably the most important with the greatest biological effects for those of us who cultivate it as yogurt.
Mm.
You can take it as a probiotic, but you're going to get low numbers. You will get benefits. And so I also, by the way, came out with a product called My Reuteri to give people higher counts than the original infant formula of a
Mm.
strain that I believe mimics all these effects also in mice and in humans.
And so basically, if you've ever been on an antibiotic, we should be doing L-reuteri in some form or another based on your research.
Well, one of the uncertainties is can you lose reuteri even if you never took an antibiotic? Probably. So there's some evidence to that effect. So what is it? Is it glyphosate? Is it
Mm.
preservatives and emulsifying agents in ice cream and other processed foods? Is it chlorinated drinking water? In other words, it's not quite clear how and why all this happened. I mean, antibiotics, absolutely, but there's probably other factors too. So
Mm.
it's not entirely clear, but such that if we were to assess the microbiomes of, say, 1,000 people, only a handful will have reuteri anymore. So nearly everybody's lost this microbe. So it's a pretty good bet. If you're a human, if you drink water and you breathe air, you probably don't have reuteri.
Mhm. Yeah, and I know you've done a lot of studies. You mentioned originally they're on rats, and we're not 100% similar to rats, rodents. But for human trials, you're doing more and having good success stories with your own clients and your own program, website followers.
Yeah, our first clinical trial was in female in ladies because the ladies were so insistent that we better understand the skin effects. Ladies, they actually said things like this to me. They said, "We don't care about generosity and empathy and muscle. We just want better skin." So I thought, okay, so we did a small clinical trial and we did indeed see fairly significant skin effects, an increase in dermal thickness. But we also saw an unexpected finding that was a dramatic reduction in waist circumference, abdominal fat. So future trials are going to explore that and quantify it
Mm.
better. Because I think what we're witnessing is a shift in what I call shape and body composition. We're getting a restoration of youthful shape and body composition,
Mm.
more muscular contours, not like Arnold Schwarzenegger, not like a bodybuilder, but more like you had when you were 25. We lose muscle as we age, about a third of muscle. And if you ever made the mistake of cutting calories on a diet or a drug, a pharmaceutical, or had a bariatric procedure, those all distort your body shape and compass. And we're seeing this play out now with this GLP-1 agonist experience. So I think we have a way of reversing that process.
Interesting. Before we go into questions, I think right there just talk match what you're speaking of. Women and their hormones. Is there, as we lower estrogen, perimenopause, postmenopause, such a huge topic, is there any correlation with changes in our hormones and how this can help with skin health and weight loss with the
Don't
lower
know.
estrogen?
So there's been, unfortunately, no animal nor human evidence explored yet. I was going to do that in our little skin trial, but our budget ran out. So I did not get a chance to assess, for instance, estradiol or progesterone. I'd like to do that in future as budget permits.
Hmm.
So, because I think there may be some beneficial effects. I think that reuteri is one of the most important microbes for female reproductive health. So
Mm.
one of the ways the reuteri works, of course, is the boosted oxytocin. Well, oxytocin is the hormone of breastfeeding.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
thing that lets the little tiny muscles in the breast expel milk. A lot
Mm.
of mothers can't breastfeed; they struggle with this, and I think one of the reasons likely is loss of reuteri and thereby oxytocin.
Mm.
Oxytocin is also instrumental in amplifying the maternal-infant bond after birth. So if a
Mm.
mom has postpartum depression, has a hard time caring for her child and bonding, that's a major problem. And that, I believe, is the lack of oxytocin in a woman who's lost reuteri.
Mm.
It also plays a role in menopausal health because reuteri is a major determinant of vaginal health. And so
Mm.
one of the phenomena of older females is you lose the lining of your vagina becomes very dry, vaginal atrophy, and pain, discharge, etc. Well, reuteri is part of the solution, I believe,
Mm.
there too. So reuteri, very important for female health. Now, by the way, uh, it's reuteri and some other microbes and other strategies are proving to be extremely effective, both reproductive and menopausal health that have nothing to do with pharmaceutical agents.
Interesting. Well, another topic to go into. All right, so we can tie that back in again because I think that's a popular topic, but I know we have lots of questions. First one can related to acne and skin health. If someone's been taking the product in the yogurt form, probiotic yogurt, whatever, what do we want to call it? The super gut yogurt or GURT?
Sure, Deb, or Rotary yogurt. Yeah.
Rotary. So they've been taking it for a month, love it, but want to know if they could benefit their daughters, both the two daughters, 18 and age 20. They have celiac disease, struggling with acne. So could their college lifestyle be a factor? And would this probiotic help their skin health?
So this has been debated for years. Is diet important in acne? Sadly, dermatology, the last person you want to ask about diet is a dermatologist. Most, I'm generalizing. But diet is crucial in managing acne. But now I can't tell this listener that Rotary alone is the solution. Rotary is part of the solution, but there's much more someone can do. They can get diet to reduce the blood glucose and insulin provoking effects of foods like wheat, grains, and sugar. That alone is a very powerful start. Addressing nutrient deficiencies that synergize to reduce insulin resistance. Insulin resistance drives acne. It's among the factors that drive acne. And so magnesium, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, all the things we do, basic nutrients are lacking in modern life. That matters also. Now, the skin microbiome is a big factor. There's a proliferation of Probiotic that causes acne and a proliferation of Staphylococcus aureus. Now, how do you deal with that besides using drugs, right? Well, that's a whole conversation. Let me boil it down to getting back to fermented foods and prebiotic fibers. Because what that does, so if you eat sauerkraut or fermented sauerkraut, not the stuff in most stores, kimchi, kefir, veggies you ferment on your kitchen counter, you're getting microbes like Leuconostoc or Weissella. These are species that don't take up residence in your GI tract, but in their passage from mouth to toilet, they cultivate the proliferation of species that produce butyric acid. So-called butyrogen acids, butyrogen species. These are species like Akkermansia, Faecalibacterium. So these are cultivated by the passage of fermented foods. They in turn produce butyric acid that goes to your skin and acidifies the skin. Healthy skin is acidic, pH about 4.5. Someone with acne has a pH about 5.5. That difference of 5.5 to 4.5 is a reduction in acidity of 10-fold. So when you get those fermented foods, and even better with those prebiotic fibers, onions, garlic, shallots, leeks, jicama, all those kinds of things, that even further acidifies the skin. And when you acidify the skin, it discourages the acne organism, the Propionibacterium, and Staphylococcus aureus, and it favors beneficial bacteria. So that in a nutshell is a start to getting control over acne using diet and then microbial solutions.
Good. All right, next question. How long can someone safely take L-reuteri yogurt? Can it be consumed indefinitely? And then they were talking about post-menopause experiences with fat malabsorption, creepy skin. Could this probiotic help improve fat digestion, skin quality? So I guess two questions. How long can you take it? And then part two is fat digestion and skin. So three questions.
Don't take it for more than 150 years. In other words, so it's supposed to be part of human life. It's been a part of human life, Deb, for the last millions of years. It's been a part of mammalian life for even longer. So, in fact, I say the loss of rotari is tantamount to losing an arm. In other words, it cripples your health, your mental health, your social health, your physical health. So it is meant to be part of human life. So you don't have to say stop it at age 50 or no such thing. You want it for a lifetime. But of course, we've all lost it. We know it has effects on skin. There's no question about that. Now, it could help fat malabsorption because the most common cause for fat malabsorption is SIBO. small intestinal bacterial overgrowth where fecal microbes have invaded the small intestine, including the duodenum. That's where pancreatic enzymes and bile are released into the GI tract, and they block the action of pancreatic enzymes. So having rotari take up residence in the duodenum and the rest of the small intestine and produce those bacteriocins that kill those invading fecal microbes. And you could indeed, there's more you can do. So you could see my recipe for SIBO yogurt. That's in my Super Gut book. It's in my blog, williamdavismd.com. And we add gaceri, Lactobacillus gaceri, and optionally Bacillus coagulans or some other microbes to increase these microbes' ability to kill off invading fecal microbes. But the rotari alone is a huge start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think joining your inner circle is a great way if people want to learn more and ask a little more detailed questions. It's a great place and safe place to ask questions, and you get a lot of feedback from other people who've been there a while. So this goes with that question as well. After they finish the 4-week program, as in your book, Super Gut, do they need to keep consuming the L-reuteri ongoing, or how long should you cycle it in and out?
Well, if you're doing it for SIBO, you want to take it for a minimum of 4 weeks uh, until you have some sign that it's gone. If you use the AIRE device, right, the AIRE, if you
Yeah.
normalize hydrogen gas, that will tell you. If you had a food intolerance, let's say to eggplant or tomatoes, re-expose yourself to a small amount, see if you're now tolerant. If you are, you know you've pretty much gotten rid of your SIBO. Or maybe the fat malabsorption went away, or your disrupted sleep is now much better. Look for some sign that we can associate with your SIBO, and then you know. But I would still continue to get the rotari and perhaps the other organisms of the SIBO yogurt because SIBO loves to come back.
Yeah.
And I know most ladies want to have better skin. You'll get better skin over 4 weeks, but then it'll revert back to normal if you stop it. So, but if you continue it, let's say 3 times a week, you'll continue to get skin benefits, increased dermal collagen, all those increased moisture, as well as the other beneficial effects, restoration of youthful musculature, vaginal moisture, and guys, increased testosterone. So there is value to trying to get this thing. Now, if your mom gave you lactobacillus rotari at birth, by your passage through the birth canal or breastfeeding, you would have rotari for a lifetime. But of course, we got exposed to antibiotics and it killed it. But if we get it from yogurt, it takes up residence for maybe 5 days. Why? What's the difference? It's probable that's the community of microbes. We don't yet know what the community of rotari should look like. I predict in future we'll say, don't just make rotari, get rotari with this half dozen other microbes and do that for, I don't know, a few weeks or so, and maybe takes up permanent residence. But
Yeah.
nobody knows how to do that yet.
So really, you have to keep taking it, or else if it stays in your body for 5 days and then it goes away again, then we have to repopulate. So it's ongoing.
Or have a
Interesting.
re-exposed to antibiotics or other
Yeah,
things. You make
for
the
sure.
awful mistake of eating ice cream, commercial ice cream that has packed with emulsifying agents, or you eat foods with preservatives that are antimicrobial. So any number of things will work against you.
So that goes back to what you're talking about, fermented food, sauerkraut, the ice cream. You can make your own. I know someone that makes it in the Ninja Creamy thing, and you can make your own without all the junk in it. That might be a healthier ice cream. So you really answered the last part of this question. Does the L-reuteri reach a point when it colonizes the gut and can sustain itself? If so, when does that typically happen? That's what you just said. We don't know yet.
Right.
That'd be interesting. So we have to study the microbiome, see what combination of bacteria would help keep L. reuteri from dying off basically after 5 days
You
and
know, it's like
colonize.
AI, Deb. We're only beginning to learn all these important lessons. I mean, even in the last decade, we've gotten a ton smarter, but there's still so much more to learn, including how to get these microbes to take up permanent residence.
Okay. Gut to Glow supplement. We talked about in the last video. It has the L. reuteri plus hyaluronic acid, the collagen, and astaxanthin. If you're making this into yogurt, you just take the one capsule and mix it with, like I use the inulin and half and half, and you ferment it for 36 hours at say 100 degrees what happens to the L-reuteri? Same thing. And then the other ingredients, they're not a bacteria. So they just stay the same, or do anything happen to the other parts of that?
Well, it'll turn your first batch a little red or pink, and it may look like fungal contamination. It's not. It's the astaxanthin. It's the carotenoid, which is brightly colored.
I
It
saw that.
won't harm the taste. And then and there's also what we call the first batch effect. Whenever you make yogurt from a probiotic preparation, Gut to Glow, or any other probiotic, we get something called the first batch effect, where we expect some separation into the solids, curds, and to the liquid whey. It's the next batch you make from a little bit of a prior batch, either curds or whey or both, that you tend to get more thicker, uniform result. But you'll get lots of reuteri, typically 300 billion per half cup serving, per 120 milliliter serving. But there won't be collagen, hyaluronic acid, nor astaxanthin, the carotenoids, because they don't reproduce.
Yeah.
Microbes reproduce. They're living, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those other things are not alive, so they get diluted and then they're gone. So if you want to, what I see happening, Deb, is somebody takes Gut to Glow and they love the effects, right? And then her sister says, "Hey, I need to do that too." Then her daughter wants it. Then her mom wants it. Then her friend wants it. Her neighbor wants it. Well, you can't get Gut to Glow for it. It's kind of costly. So I find that get the Gut to Glow for yourself, use it to make yogurt, give some of that yogurt to your mom or daughter, whatever. They can make the yogurt, and then they can add other sources of collagen, like bovine collagen from Costco, or hyaluronic acid. They can add their own 120 milligrams of hyaluronic acid, or they can add astaxanthin as a capsule, 4 milligrams. So in other words, it's a cost-saving maneuver, so a woman can share the microbe with other people, because it's the microbe that's the toughest to get.
Yeah, and I just made my first batch this week, and then I took one of the empty yogurt jars, and I've been dripping the liquid part to save it for the next batch. Is that
Mm-hmm.
what you mean, to save what you have and just kind of accumulate that? And then
Mm-hmm.
the other question was on the Gut to Glow, would you still do the supplements? Because often we think more is better. If I make it into yogurt, and then I still take 2 capsules in the morning and 2 at night.
You can do that. You really can't overdo reuteri.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken up to 1 trillion. I wanted to see if there was an amplification of the emotional effects. I did not experience it, but I did not experience any kind of adverse effect. Think about that. So it's, even though it sounds like a lot, 300 billion in the yogurt made from Gut to Glow or My Reuteri, sounds like a lot, but it's really being thrown into hundreds of trillions in your gut. So it sounds like a lot. If it was money, it'd be huge, but it's not. It's microbes. And 300 billion is not a really big number. But this is the advantage over probiotics. If we put 300 billion in a capsule, it'd be extremely expensive. I mean, probably $300-400 a month. It'd be unreasonable. That's why we don't put that kind of those numbers in capsule form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Next question on bacteria strains. I think you mentioned a few different ones, but have you found a reliable and affordable source for the 3 specific strains of bacteria required to make the yogurt? L-reuteri, L-gasseri, Bax's, collagens, and they were talking about some different brands, but they were asking of the different ones, which would you suggest using or ordering to make the super gut
Well,
yogurt?
I'm biased. I've lost my any kind of affection for the original form, the BioGaia Gastris. It had a lot of issues. So I formulated my own. That's the My Reuteri, or the Gut to Glow. We've studied it in animals and in humans. So that's my preferred source, is the My Reuteri. For the Lactobacillus gasseri, if you're going to go further and make the so-called SIBO yogurt, we will have a source for that, but right now the best source is Dr. Mercola's Mercola Marketplace, and they have the BNR17 strain,
Yeah.
and that we know is likewise produces a lot of bacteriocins. Now, the Bacillus coagulans is optional. I'm still not, after several years, I'm still undecided how necessary it is, but you can get it as the Schiff Digestive Advantage, and it's widely available. You could always try just the reuteri or just the reuteri and gasseri and see if it works for you. I'm hearing from a lot of health coaches, by the way, Deb, who say, you know what, it was too much trouble. to get those other micro. I just had my clients do the rotary, and they're getting rid of their SIBO. At least they're getting rid of their food intolerances,
Mhm.
their painful joints, their skin rat, all the kind of things that accompany a reduction in endotoxemia.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's good. Right. Probiotic fermentation, vegan options. Someone said they ferment gluten sterilized green buckwheat and other foods using L-reuteri starter to make vegan probiotic foods. Do you have recommendations to optimize this process? Yeah, and the next question is
All the
totally
rules are
opposite.
much the rules are much the same. So our preferred non-animal source is canned coconut milk. Just make sure it has no thickening agents like gel and gum or xanthan gum. Guar gum is okay. That's just a fiber. So
Mm,
that's an easy thing to do. Salsa is a real friendly vehicle for
mm,
fermentation. Hummus, and you can ferment all kinds of stuff. Ketchup. I ferment juices. We avoid juices in general because of the sugar content.
yeah.
But when you ferment it, when done properly, the sugar is gone because the microbes metabolize the sugar. So there's
Yes.
lots of things you can ferment.
And there are tons of recipes in your book. And again, the website, the Inner Circle, has a huge, lots of resources on there, right? The other question is the opposite end, a carnivore. When consuming L-reuteri yogurt, would this be beneficial to someone following a carnivore diet, considering the lack of fiber that's on the carnivore diet?
Yeah, I fear the people on carnivore or ketogenic diets who neglect their fibers are going to get in trouble. And we're seeing it play out now because a lot of those people come to us when their health starts to deteriorate. Here's the problem, Deb. People do those diets and they get these wonderful upfront benefits. They say, "Oh, my waist has shrunk by 8 inches. My triglycerides have dropped from 300 to 48. My blood sugar is now in the normal range when I was a pre-diabetic." So those all play out. But about 18 months or so, it varies, 12, 18, 24 months, very dangerous changes occur in your microbiome. You lose beneficial microbes, and there are microbes who have specific advantages in that setting. So, for instance, there's one microbe called Akkermansia muciniphila, mucus lover. When you feed it microbes, it's happy. When you feed it, I'm sorry, fibers, it's happy. If you deprive it of fibers, other species die off. Akkermansia becomes dominant because it feeds on human mucus. It feeds on your intestinal lining and causes colitis, intestinal inflammation. It increases endotoxemia. And that's likely the explanation why people say, I've been doing this for 18 months. I did great, but now I'm regaining weight. My triglycerides are going back up. My blood sugar is going back up. I'm having stomach aches. I'm constipated. Uh, in children who do ketogenic diets for seizure control, they stop growing. They develop kidney stones. They develop osteoporosis as teenagers, and there's an occasional death from cardiomyopathy, heart muscle disease. And so those are useful short-term strategies, meaning weeks, never longer. Bad things happen. Now, rotary is only part of the solution. So rotary is a really good thing. So the worst thing to do is not get rotary and address the microbiome. The best thing to do if you fell in that trap of thinking that carnivorous or ketogenic diets are the solution, add back rotary, think about gastri, absolutely lots of fermented foods. That's how you restore at least some of the lost microbes, the things you've lost, all the fecalibacterium and other beneficial microbes you lost. Lots of prebiotic fibers, onions, garlic, shallots, leeks, dandelion greens, all that kind of stuff. Hyaluronic acid. I should mention that, Deb. Hyaluronic acid is one of the few fibers sourced from animals.
Mm.
It comes from organs like brain and tongue and skin, and it
Mm.
blooms those microbes you may have lost or have diminished in numbers. And so you've got to recover from the microbiome damage done by those diets.
Mm. So unless you're eating a carnivore diet with the organ meat, you may be lacking enough the nutrients that you need for your microbiome.
Well, organ meats would only supply the collagen and hyaluronic acid. They wouldn't supply the fibers beyond hyaluronic acid,
Mhm.
that are required to, and
Enough.
you also get peculiar distortions. You get proliferation of species like D-sulfovibrio. These are hydrogen sulfide producing microbes that have been associated with colon cancer. And there's distortions in bile acid metabolism that likewise increase some of the bile acids, so-called secondary bile acids, that also have been associated with colon cancer. So those die. Well, please don't hear meat. I don't want your listeners to hear meat consumption causes cancer. It does not.
Yeah.
But a diet of meat without fibers has been shown to be a great risk factor for colon cancer.
Hmm. Good info. And you have a ton of great podcasts you've done on different topics yourself. People want to learn more. There's pretty much 30 minutes in a lot of them, just good,
Well,
solid
thanks for
information.
noticing.
People educate. I listen all the time. It's my car ride podcast. So SIBO protocol, can someone take the candibactin for SIBO while consuming the SIBO yogurt, or would that interfere with the protocol? Which I don't know, it says in your book, the SIBO protocol, that's part of it, right? How would that
Well,
use the candibactin?
here's some things to know. So there are two herbal antibiotic regimens that have some validation, scientific validation: the candibactin AR, candibactin BR,
Mhm.
or the FC-Cidal and dysbiosis, and they work. What they don't do is begin to restore the microbiome that you've
Mhm.
lost. And they're fairly indiscriminate, like conventional antibiotics. They kill bad microbes, like the microbes, pardon me, like the microbes of SIBO, but they also kill good microbes, including the microbes in your yogurts.
Mhm.
So there's no harm in, say, taking the SIBO yogurt with the herbal antibiotics, but you're going to not get full benefit because you're going to kill the reuteri and the gasteri with the components of those two herbal antibiotics. So I would either do one or the other. And I would always try the SIBO yogurt first because while that it kills those fecal microbes like the antibiotics do, but they also begin the process of rebuilding, restoring healthy species that you need. Pardon
Okay,
me.
good. I know there's good information in the book on that too. The green tea, the clove tea. What is the best type of clove green tea to support gut health? Are there specific compounds in the green tea that enhance the effects of L-reuteri or other probiotics?
Well, I only have one recipe for clove green tea. I'm not sure what what types. There's only one type. I would buy your cloves bulk. Don't buy them in the spice section, too expensive. And we boil it for about 10 minutes, a tablespoon or two, and that releases the eugenol oil that thickens the mucus barrier. And then we add like a tea bag, green tea bag. Trader Joe's has a really high epigallocatechin green tea bag, and you let that steep for a couple of minutes. And then I like to add a teaspoon or more of inulin. So what happens here is the eugenol of clove thickens the mucus barrier. The epigallocatechin and other green tea catechins cross-link the mucus, the mucin proteins, and that combination strengthens the mucus barrier, turning it from a semi-liquid to a much more protective semi-gel. What that does is it gives you really, if you're having a lot of problems with abdominal discomfort or what you may judge as endotoxemia, let's say you're having panic or anxiety or nightmares or self-doubt. That's a really common one, Deb. Hatred, anger, all the emotional impact of endotoxemia and the microbiome. The clove green tea, you may drink, sip it, and you may say, "Wow, I feel happier." It's because you've reduced endotoxemia. And if you can tolerate the inulin, not everybody can at first. So people with really bad SIBO can't tolerate the inulin. So leave it out if you can't tolerate it. But if you can weave a little inulin in, inulin blooms butyrate producing species and further helps heal your intestinal lining. So this is not meant to be something you do for a lifetime. It's something you do maybe in the beginning when you're struggling and you're having a lot of emotional effects or abdominal discomfort or diarrhea, bloating. It just helps soften the blow.
Hmm. Okay, good. Last two questions on the main list. Conflicting information, pasteurized dairy to be heated to 100 degrees before cooling to 100 for raw milk. I think that was the coconut milk, right? They want clarification when you have to heat to 180 and then cool to 100. Is that just coconut milk, not the pasteurized dairy?
It is good to do with coconut milk, but you can do it. So the reason for that is people who like to make it with whole milk, we make it with organic half and half.
Yeah, it was
But if you
raw
make,
milk they're asking about, I guess.
okay, if you make it with whole milk, it helps to heat to 180 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple of minutes. It gives a better mouthfeel. If it's raw milk, and this is the downside. Raw milk is great for microbes, but if it is contaminated, this is the problem. If you were in Minnesota, for instance, where raw milk is legal, there's about several dozen deaths per year, mostly in children, and mostly in children who drink their own family's milk from their own cows. So it's because people say, if I trust the farmer, well, you trust your dad, right, or your mom, and yet there are several dozen deaths per year in Minnesota from exposure to raw milk. The danger with yogurt is, let's say you have a batch of milk that has a little bit of listeria or staphylococcus. Well, now you're going to ferment it and you're going to increase the number of those pathogens thousands of times greater. And now you have a yogurt that's potentially fatal. So it's not a good idea to ferment raw milk. I wish that wasn't true because it's great for microbes, but if you want to ferment it, you're risking proliferation of pathogens. Now, another new issue that I didn't fully appreciate. Once in a while, someone will say, I got great batches of the yogurt, but then I got a really stinky batch. Separated, looked off, was all curdled, and it stunk like awful, right? Throw that out. That's probably, I think now, it's probably contamination from inulin. You know, the inulin we use to get higher numbers of microbes is not sterile. So I went back to a whole bunch of commercial preparation of inulin and looked at their certificates of analyses. When you get commercial inulin, you get a statement. They submitted for independent testing. And it was clear that all inulin has some microbes. It's not dangerous levels, it's low numbers, but we're going to ferment it and increase microbes. Now, if you preheat to 180 degrees Fahrenheit for a couple of minutes, you kill some of the microbes. The problem with that is you don't kill spore-forming microbes. Spore-forming microbes are tough, Deb. You could bake them and they still survive. You could find them in a fossil from 10 million years ago. They're still alive. They're super tough. So I've been thinking about, should we ultraviolet radiate the inulin? Should we? So I don't have an answer right now. So preheating may address some of the problem. Uh, if you get a bad batch, think about buying a different brand of inulin. Think about preheating until we come up with a better solution to find a sterile fiber.
Yeah, and if you have SIBO and you can't do inulin when you're making the yogurt, how would you make it with something besides inulin?
Well, people with really bad SIBO are intolerant to almost all fibers. So
Mm.
there really is no safe fiber. So just make it without the fiber. You won't get as nice a mouthfeel. You'll get somewhat lower microbial counts,
Hmm.
but you'll still get a lot of microbes and it'll still be edible.
Hmm. And another question, we talked about fat malabsorption, but bloating, constipation, when people have this, that's related to SIBO, I assume, and the L-reuteri would help them. But should they do something else besides the L-reuteri? You talked about
Well,
that in the book.
if someone feels they have really bad SIBO, think about adding the Lactobacillus gasseri and optionally the Bacillus coagulans to increase. All that does, Deb, is it increases the number of bacteriocins, the number of
Mhm.
natural antibiotics that kill off fecal microbes. Now, an occasional person says, "Hey, I've got really bad histamine intolerance." And I ate the rotavirus yogurt and it made my histamine intolerance worse. I got skin rashes, an asthma attack, or some other phenomenon associated with histamine. Well, so several potential solutions. That, by the way, is from severe SIBO. So the food is not the problem. The rotavirus is not the problem. It's the severe SIBO causing the histamine intolerance. Histamine is a good thing. It's gotten a bad name, but it's actually a good thing because
Yeah.
it's a mediator. It's a signal molecule. It's a normal, healthy signal molecule, unless you've got SIBO. So one option would be use much less of the yogurt rather than a half cup, maybe a couple of teaspoons, a tablespoon. And if you still can't tolerate it, that's when you have to go to the herbal antibiotics and eradicate the SIBO, then introduce the rotarite or SIBO yogurt. So this only happens perhaps 1 out of 50 people, but there's a lot of SIBO out there, Deb. There's so much SIBO. We're bound to run into some people with histamine intolerance consequent to SIBO.
And I think that's reminds me of something you talk about a lot on your podcast and the book, that if you have all these different food sensitivities, it's not just avoid them. That's why a lot of people go on a strict carnivore diet. Elimination diet ends up just being meat, and they might feel better, but it's still not figuring out the root cause of why you have these food sensitivities. So starting with the gut, doing your protocol, improve the gut health, the leaky gut, because it's all connected. So we want to always look at, why can I tolerate that food? What else is going on under the hood to figure out why I have extreme reaction to foods.
I worry about those people, Deb, because the people who say things like, well, I went on a low FODMAPs diet and I felt better, or I went
Mm-hmm.
on a carnivore diet and I felt better, or I eliminated all fructose sources, legumes, or the nightshades, or whatever. Well, yeah, you reduce the symptoms, but you haven't addressed the SIBO. And if you don't do that, it doesn't go away,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to have problems in your future. It could be in the form of weight gain, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune diseases, cognitive impairment and dementia, coronary disease, atrial fibrillation, Parkinson's. In other words, trouble is ahead then if you allow that awful situation to persist because you were lulled by the temporary reduction in symptoms by some food avoidance.
And all those health issues are result of not dealing with the SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that increases the LPS and the leaky gut, and how that can go into extremities, leading to all these different various diseases.
Exactly. Not to say that they're caused solely by endotoxin. Some of them are,
Mhm.
but some of them might require additional things. Like Parkinson's disease is a disease of both microbiome, and there's probably other factors also, especially toxic exposures, industrial exposures. So, but part of the solution is to address the microbiome.
And I'll put a plug in for Martha BiotiQuest. We are doing just a podcast on her story with Parkinson's with her husband, because I found that so fascinating, the role of L. reuteri and other bacteria with people with Parkinson's, and with her research she's done and the
Hmm.
doing the L. reuteri. It's pretty amazing. Excited to see, as I'm helping improve the aging process, but how many people, my mom, 83, and how many friends at that age are having this cognitive issues, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. And so, really, at age 50 something, I feel that we should be getting on top of that and not have this cognitive decline that seems to be so common, or just kind of part of aging. I'm going to lose my brain function. And I think it's something we can work on now instead of dealing with it later.
Absolutely. Endotoxemia is probably a major driver of Alzheimer's, of cognitive impairment.
Hmm. Scary. All right, one more question we can fit in here on the gut to glow. Well, that's a common question of wrinkles, fine lines, collagen production. How long do you feel that you need to take the product? I'm sure it varies per person, but typical protocol to see results.
Well, in our clinical
And
trial, it was 90 days when we saw all the changes. We did something called high resolution skin ultrasound to measure the thickness of the dermis. So it's not good enough to say, well, we think wrinkles reduce. So we did it scientifically, and we did get a marked increase in dermal thickness. That's what you're looking for, as a reflection of dermal collagen. So we saw it at 90 days. Now, anecdotally, most ladies will say, I think I see a change at 8 weeks. It varies. Some people see changes very quickly. Some say,
yeah,
yeah, it's been 8 weeks now. I'm starting to see. And then typically 90 days, people say, yeah, I see it. And we see it in photographs with reduction of the fine wrinkles, et cetera.
I think best way to do that, study N=1 experiment, is take pictures and see, like, I'm on
Yes,
week one, but just kind of keep checking in, taking a photo and save them in an album, your Gut to Glow photo album on your phone, and track your own changes, because it's the only way you can really see it yourself,
excellent
maybe.
advice, Deb. The
Yeah.
problem is ladies hate to take the before picture. Uh, and even better,
Need
take
baseline.
yes, not just your face, but your waistline,
Yeah.
because your body shape is going to change too
All
with the
right.
return of
Bikini. Put that
musculature.
bikini on, take a photo.
Yeah, yeah. I've had ladies who've done that, but they tend to be the very courageous ones.
Let's do it, ladies. All right. And last question, I know someone asked me, a couple times about freezing. If they're going out of town, they're making the yogurt, but they're not going to be home for a few days. Can we freeze that liquid substance to reuse for making yogurt or the bottles we have? What's the damage?
Microbes are very tolerant to freezing, yes. So some people do this. They take the whey, the liquid, and they pour it into an ice cube tray and make ice
Mm,
cubes, and they use a couple of ice cubes as their starter for the next batch.
very
Another
cool.
thing you can do is you can take the curds, the solids, and we like to make ice cream out of it. Makes a great like chocolate mint ice cream or strawberry ice cream. So the microbes, in fact, when we get microbes from a microbe manufacturer, we get it frozen. So they're very intolerant to heat, but they're very tolerant to cold.
Hmm. So if you make ice cream with it from the ice cubes, does that damage the bacteria if you put in a bowl it, ninja creamy thing, bowl it
Yeah,
and
you
blend it?
want to avoid mechanical blending.
Yeah,
If it's a real gentle blend, like a spoon or a slow, maybe ice cream maker, you'll still have lots of live microbes. But if you use like a hand mixer or something really rapid, that mechanical action does kill a lot of microbes.
that's what I would think. All right. Well, there's lots of other gut to glow questions. I think we answered most of them. Here's a good one. Does stress impact gut health, the skin aging, and how we can mitigate its effects? That's,
Stress is a huge factor.
yeah.
So it's very common to get, for instance, SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth. So let's say you had and as well as SIBO. Let's say you had a very stressful period. Not stress hurrying for work, not that kind of stress. Prolonged, profound stress. Taking care of an elderly parent with dementia, taking care of a child with autism, financial stress, bad marriage, all this stuff, bad job, and you hate your boss. All those kinds of chronic stresses absolutely completely distort the microbiome, and SIBO and SIFO are very common. There's no quick and easy answer except that the
Hmm.
SIBO, you start with rotari, maybe gastri, other things. With SIFO is tougher to deal with. And one of the phenomena we haven't talked about, Deb, is the die-off reaction. So if somebody says this, they say, all right, I took the gut to glow or the my rotari or the yogurt, and I got anxiety and bloating and nightmares. It must be the right. No, it's die-off. It's the sudden death of a bunch of fecal microbes in your upper GI tract. So once again, reduce the intake. So if it's my rotari, maybe open the capsule into food, kefir or yogurt or something like that. Use only half a capsule. If it's the yogurt, don't take a half cup, maybe take a tablespoon, something like that. So do it gradually so that you're not flooding your bloodstream with that endotoxin. Likewise, fungal overgrowth. If you have reason to believe fungal overgrowth, maybe you did a stool test and it showed a lot of candida, for instance. Or you have fungal infections. You say, I've got a fungal rash here, behind my ears, scalp, eyelids, under my breasts, groin, toenails, fingernails. You'll see this especially in people with diabetes, as well as people without diabetes, because fungi love sugar. And a diabetic, their entire body is sugary, not just their bloodstream, their skin, their blood, their uterus, their heart, everything is full of sugar, and fungi take up residence. So you'll see it the most extreme in people with diabetes, but it can happen in non-diabetics also. But the only, unfortunately, there's no easy way to identify fungal overgrowth except stool testing or just your suspicion. If you, let's say you say, I had a groin infection that was fungal, I've had eczema that was fungal. A lot of eczema is fungal. So if you have eczema on your hand, for instance, and you put an antifungal cream like Lotrimin or a dilute essential oil like oil of cinnamon. So maybe a few drops and a tablespoon of some oil, your choice of oil. Could be coconut oil, castor oil, avocado oil, and if it's gone within a day or two, that's fungal. But then you got to ask, where did it come from?
Hmm.
Am I seeding my skin or other places from my gastrointestinal tract? So some people say, you know what? I don't want to pay $500, whatever, for stool testing. I'm just going to go ahead with an antifungal program. So we've been using a lot of berberine, for instance. The Candibactin BR is good for that. There's some other things you can do also to address the fungal overgrowth.
And toe fungus, is that in there too? People have fungus on their toenails.
We don't have enough data to tell us that something like that originates with bowel flora, but I suspect it does.
Hmm.
And one of the most worrisome things is there's very good evidence, MRI and post-mortem evidence from Spain, that people with dementia have brains filled with fungi. Well, where'd they come from? They come from the sinuses, from the throat, or from the GI tract. Now, that's a real, we can't biopsy people's brains, so we can't predict that before your autopsy. So
Wow.
it makes me wonder though, if you have
Mm.
CFO, and let's say you have fungal overgrowth in your mouth or sinuses or skin, should we embark? Things like berberine and Candidobacter BR do not penetrate through into the nervous system, into the brain. So there you have to resort, if this proves true, if that data proves true, that people with fungal overgrowth do better cognitively by eradicating the fungi, that means we have to rely on a systemic antifungal like fluconazole. But we're not there yet, so I wouldn't advise doing that. But I'm very concerned by this thing. That is fungal overgrowth. You successfully eradicate it in the GI tract. But what about here? It's a
Hmm.
real tough question.
Hmm. All right. So going back to what you're saying about the die off, would it be a good stack to do in your protocol, helping your gut do sauna treatment? So we do a sunlight and sauna at nighttime and help the near, mid, far infrared wavelengths. Would that help with any detox protocol with the die off and do a binder?
Binder, yes, like activated charcoal.
Yeah.
So 1,000 milligram capsule, for instance, when you have, let's say you're doing the rotary or you're doing the candidobactin, and you're starting to get panic or depression or suicidal thoughts
Hmm.
or skin rash or asthma, a capsule of activated charcoal typically provides relief within about 15 minutes. So it's a nice thing. It also binds nutrients. So it's not something you want to do chronically. You just want to do it episodically as needed, that kind of a thing.
Hmm.
Now I love playing. Here's my red light.
Yeah, the red light therapy tends,
I've switched over also from LED right here on my
yeah, I
desk
heard
lamp
that.
to incandescent bulbs.
Hmm.
Yeah, so but I can't say that we know what happens to the microbiome. If any light frequency has an effect on the microbiome, it's likely infrared because ultraviolet and visible light don't penetrate the body.
Hmm.
Ultraviolet
Like
only goes as
near.
far as the epidermis. That's why we get a tan and activation of vitamin D. But infrared does penetrate and can get into the intestines. But to my knowledge, Deb, no one's actually charted what happens to the intestinal microbiome. It's a really cool question, though, but I don't know what
Hmm.
happens.
I did ask that a year ago. I interviewed one of the co-founders of FlexBeam. It's a red light device with near infrared. And I said, what if you could put it on your belly? What would that do to the microbiome? And so I was kind of doing my own testing. He wanted me to do my own research, study on it, and do some labs. But I think it'd be interesting, like if I just laid that on there for 10 minutes a night, a few days a week, what would happen? So
You know,
I don't know.
Glenn Jeffrey from the UK has that evidence where if you shine a 670 red, visible red on the back versus no light, you get improvement in glucose tolerance, a reduction in peak glucose, reduction in area under the curve, and an increase in breath carbon dioxide as a reflection of glucose metabolism. So, Deb, there's so much still to be explored. Though I do remind people before you go out and spend a lot of money, just get sunlight if you live in that kind of, like if you're lucky like you live in San Diego. Yeah, I can't get sun. We don't see sun. It's gray most of the time. It's like 0 degrees a lot of times. So that's why I have a red light. But if you have the
Yeah.
luxury of living in a sunny climate, getting sun is what you want to.
Yes, for sure. And hopefully you get some out to some warm weather soon so you can see the sun yourself. So thank you. Where can people learn more and how we'll put the link to how to join the inner circle if they want to get into
Oh,
all
thanks, Deb.
this information we discuss in your podcast is, as I said, is a great resource as well.
So the recipes are all most of the recipes laid out in the Super Gut book. I have a collection of recipes also in my blog, William Davis MD. There's thousands of posts there. As Deb points out, there's lots of recipes as well as guidance. So last night, for instance, I had a 2 hour conversation with 90 some people. And among the things we talked about were the yogurts and other strategies. Um, the microbes that I helped formulate, My Reuteri and Gut to Glow, are good starting places if you want to make the yogurt. Those are our preferred sources. And of course, if you want to go further with the SIBO yogurt, you can get those sources like Mercola Market, all listed in the Super Gut book.
Yeah, and you can get those on full script if you have a full script account, I have a full script, you can get all those products are on there too with the Mercola stuff. So you can look there directly and find the extras. So thank you so much for your time today. I know everyone has
Thank you,
probably the
Deb.
same questions over and over again. So it's good to put it all into one episode.
My
So we
pleasure.
appreciate you.